a new immigration arrived, we were there to help.
Israel in the 1990s, a second exodus.
I trust you, and I know that you're all Zionist leaders, that you want to do more, and I know you can. So when you go back, tell your communities that you've been here, you've seen it, and now is the time to help us more than ever. This is an historic challenge we are giving you, and you have to live up to this historic challenge. Thank you very much.
January 1991, an emergency session at Wizo headquarters in Tel Aviv. The presidents of Wizo federations around the world seek inspiration for the emergency Aliyah fundraiser. It is the eve of the Gulf War.
I was only 19 years old when I was a student at the University in Chernobyl in Romania, and one day I was insulted for being a Jewess and told to go and sit in the last row. Whereupon I took my books, went home, and told my father that I will not continue at the university where I'm insulted because I'm Jewish. My father asked me, where do I want to continue my studies? And as every young girl, I said, of course, I want to go to Paris. He said, you cannot go to Paris. The war has broken out in Europe between Germany and France. I will talk to your grandfather, and we will decide together where to send you. As my family were all Zionists, my father, my mother, my grandfather said, send her to Eretz Israel, and you will all follow. And this was a decision to be taken. I was very unhappy. I was afraid of a country where I didn't know anybody. I was afraid of going to a country where there is sand and stone, and what am I going to go to do there after having lived in a country where life was so easy and so pleasant and so comfortable. When my father brought me to the boat to send me off to Palestine with a certificate for the Hebrew University, I cried and said, please take me home, I don't want to go alone. But my father said, don't be afraid. If you don't like it, you can come home after 3 months. Next day, after I arrived in Eretz Israel in Palestine, I drove up to the Hebrew University to register as a student. The way then was not this beautiful large road. It was a narrow way, the old Jerusalem road. On both sides were orange groves, and I was absolutely overcome by the perfume of the orange groves blossoms. I fell in love with it. And 2 days later, I wrote home a letter to my parents, telling them, I will never return home. I will stay. This is my country.
Half a year after arriving in what was then Palestine, she married Joseph Yaglom. Elchanan and Nurit were born.
A very nice lady called Sonia Shapira came to see me at home in Rupin 4, where we lived before, and asked me to join Wizo, and I told her that I couldn't do it because I'm expecting a baby, and she said she'll come back after the confinement, and she came back next year, 41, and I became a member of Wizo. And then she asked the leaders of Tel Aviv Wizo branch to meet me, and she arranged a meeting in a coffee house on Ben Yehuda Street. I think it was called Sabar, and there I met the wonderful women like Tessa Taiber-Zal and Leah Wilinski-Zal and Leah Bitelli-Zal. They're all gone. All these wonderful women are not there anymore. And they explained to me what Wizo stands for and what they're doing. And I like the program of helping children, small children, elderly children, and the help for women. And they asked me, well, how can I help them? And I said, well, I could arrange a bazaar. I've learned in Romania at school how to embroider tablecloths and blouses and all sorts of beautiful things. And they said, that's a good idea. So I arranged the first bazaar at the Bilu School on Rothschild Boulevard. But at the time, a bazaar was not what it is today, because we used to embroider it, we used to wash it, to iron it, and we used to buy it ourselves. So we did the whole job in advance. But of course, we brought many friends to buy things, and then there were ladies who were preparing beautiful cakes and food, and everybody was there in the evening to have a good time.
And we made a lot of money with it, and this is how we started really, how I started working for Wizo.
After 1945, the full horror of the Nazi Holocaust was revealed. Raya Jaglom's sister, cut off by the war, could now reach Palestine and rejoin her family. The Jewish underground mounted the Hapala, bringing Holocaust survivors clandestinely to Palestine. Raya Jaglom joined the Haganah and participated in its operations.
Once in the evening, quite late, we were told on the phone to come back down to the beach. And there was a center in Hayarkon where the Dan Hotel is now. There was a little house where we met as headquarters, and we were told to bring warm clothes. We were not told what to do, just to come with warm clothes and wait. So it must have been 9 or 10 o'clock in the evening, and we waited, all of us together. We were about 4 women among all the men there. And we had, we waited till 3 in the morning. Nothing happened. We were told to do nothing. And then we were quite bored, and we said, well, what's happening? And I said, wait another few hours, something will happen. At 5 in the morning, we were told, now you go down to the beach and pretend you're walking in couples. And when you will see little boats coming in and giving signs, green signs, then you will know that immigrants are being brought from Syria, from the Lebanese border. So we went down, and we walked up and down, and it was not very pleasant because the British were driving on the tanks on top of our heads on near where the Pilz house is, and the Pilz coffee house was then. And we took it very well, and suddenly I happened to be the first to see a green light, and I was so excited that I started running up, and it was only sand and stone. And when I arrived in this little house, I couldn't speak because my voice was gone, so I was just giving signs, meaning the lights are there. And then they went down, and we all went down and disembarked the people. There were 165 women, children, and elderly people. They were brought to kibbutzim where they got an identity card, and then they became on their own citizens. Once I was even taken to prison in Tulkarem because I took the wrong turn. Instead of going way back from Haifa, I went to Tulkarem, and then the British arrested me with the people in my car. And they kept us for a few hours, but nothing really happened. They behaved quite well, only they kept us in the car from 10 in the morning till 6 in the afternoon without talking to us, without letting us move, without getting out of the car. They just checked whether the story I was telling, that the car belonged to my husband and to a factory which he had then, they checked whether it's true. And when I complained to one of the soldiers, I said, look, I have 2 little children at home. I have a baby of a year, and you just can't do it to me. I mean, let me ring them up and tell them I'm on my way home. And he said, well, madam, you're sitting on a hot seat. To tell you the truth, I was sitting on a hot seat, but they didn't know it. So the boys in the car were very nervous about it, but then we drove home and everything went well. So after that, I think I really decided that's enough, and then I gave up and went back to Wizo.
May 14th, 1948, the end of the British mandate in Palestine.
It was Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, and I was sitting on a jeep in Jaffa on Boulevard Rothschild with my colleagues, so-called, the soldiers. And we were told just to sit and wait and see that everything is quiet. We saw the shops and the stores brought down, and suddenly on the radio we heard the voice of Ben-Gurion declaring the state of Israel. And it was a voice and a statement that probably I will never forget in my life. It was the most exciting moment of the creation of the State of Israel. We were sitting very quietly waiting until the declaration will be finished, and then we knew we have a state.
The Declaration of Independence was soon followed by mass immigration. Holocaust survivors from the DP camps, together with entire Jewish communities from various Arab countries, flooded the young state. The means for their absorption were meager at best.
I think it was the end of 48, beginning of 49, because then we had the big immigration arriving with many children, and we were in charge of Rosh Ain, because the Yemenites started arriving with the babies and lots of children. And we had no place where to put them up, so we decided, Wizo decided, to evacuate 10,000 children from Rosh Ain and to take them into our institutions, but we didn't have enough place, so we took many of them home. I had at the time 3 children in my house. Everybody took 1 or 2 children home too. But the main thing was to save the babies. So we put up a very large prefabricated home in Rosh Ain, and we took them out of the tents and brought our nurses from the Mothercraft Training Center in Tel Aviv there. And we even witnessed when a woman gave birth to a baby in such a tent with the parents and grandparents and everybody around her. It was awful to look at it. And we wanted to do very much to end this catastrophic situation. So we decided, Wizo decided, to raise money for this purpose, for the prefabricated homes. So Hadassah Samuel called me in and she said that Mrs. Half would like you to come to Switzerland. And I said, I'll try. I've never done it, but I can only try. And the fact was that in 6 weeks in Zurich and in the German-speaking Swiss part, I raised so much money that nobody could believe, how did I get so much money? It was very simple. We walked then from early morning, from 9 in the morning till 6 in the evening, from office to office, from shop to shop, from person to person, to banks, to people they knew. They took me there to explain why I'm there. And so we raised a lot of money. And then we came back and we started really putting up more prefabricated homes in our youth villages, in our schools. And we took in more children.
During the 1950s, Wizo's top priority remained the needs of the ever-growing population. Heading these efforts was Lady Rebecca Seif of England, the founder of Wizo, the first Zionist women's organization. After years of intensive activity in the UK and Europe, she settled in Israel.
Rebecca Seif came to Palestine in February 48. And I came back from a private trip to New York. I went to see my family, my husband's family. I didn't know them. And then the chairman of the Tel Aviv branch, the late Sarah Epstein, asked me to have a reception for Rebecca Seif at home. And I was very honored and very excited about the fact that I'm going to receive Rebecca Seif, the founder of Wizo. So I invited a few ladies, and we had a very nice meeting and nice coffee and cakes, which I used to bake at the time myself, not now. Now I don't have the time for it, but I like to bake cakes then. And I said something which upset Becky very much. So our first encounter was not a very successful one. I told them what I saw in the United States. And I said that in my opinion, I don't believe that American Jews will come on Aliyah, will come to Israel, when we will have the state of Israel. And Rebecca Seif got very annoyed with me, and she said, how dare you say such a thing? I know all the leaders, the Zionist leaders. I know their families. I know they will all come and bring their children and make Aliyah. And in much later years, when we were very friendly with Becky, I used to remind her, you see, she lived for Wizo, and Wizo was all her life. She created it. She followed it daily in London. Even during the Blitz, she was active. She didn't give up meetings. She saved many children from Germany by receiving for them certificates from the British, which wasn't easy. And all her stories about the movement and about Youth Aliyah, because she was also one of the founders of Youth Aliyah, impressed me very much. Her dedication, her devotion to it. So I learned a lot from it. And somehow she was a model for me.
That her number one concern was Wizo. That was her thing. And she was concerned that it should continue well led after her death. And she had the view and formed the opinion that Raya Jaglom was not only a person of great ability, but a leader. And it was she, mother, who encouraged those responsible to vote that Raya Jaglom should succeed her. And Raya, I don't know whether mother sees anything now, looking down or looking up, whether she sees anything, but there's not the slightest doubt that mother would have been very happy with the way Raya Jaglom has led Wizo since she became the head of it.
In 1990, Raya Jaglom found a way to honor her predecessor. An exhibition dedicated to Lady Rebecca Seif was inaugurated at Beit HaTfutzot, the Museum of the Diaspora. Israel's political and public figures were all there.
When I became a member of the executive, I didn't really have a portfolio. And one day, the treasurer then, the late Leah Wilinski, was a very strong personality. She rang me up and she said, I want you to be my deputy. I said, wait a minute, I can't read a balance sheet and I can't read a budget. How can I be your deputy treasurer? She says, you will learn. And she closed the phone. And I had that night a dinner party at home, and among my guests was the French ambassador, Pierre Gilbert, who is known, I think, to every Israeli here because everybody loved him. And I told him the story. I said, how can a woman offer me to make me deputy treasurer when I don't even know how to read figures? He said in French, my dear girl, qui a la caisse a le pouvoir. Who has the cash has the power. You take it. I thought it's a good advice, so I went to the office and I said, I'll take it if you want to teach me. And today, I enjoy reading a budget. And I'm probably among the few who can read a balance sheet on our executive. And I think that being the treasurer was probably the most interesting job I had, because you have the pulse of the organization when you're a treasurer. You know every little thing that happens in your organization.
Article 3. Article 3? Yes, פשוט.
From her modest office in Tel Aviv, Raya Jaglom runs a large and intricate international operation, closely monitoring even the smallest of details.
When I became a treasurer, my obsession became to build. To build, build, and build. To enlarge institutions, to initiate new institutions and new daycare centers. And I knew that by building, we will enlarge the activities, obviously. So I was trying to find donors to give us money to build. I persuaded executives to build Beit Hoys, which they didn't want to because the money came from Germany and they didn't want a German donation. And then I persuaded them to accept it in memory of all the Wizo women we lost during the Holocaust. And they agreed to it, that the idea was a good one, and then I had to travel to Germany and to get more than what was offered to us by the Müttergenesungswerke, that was the Catholic German organization which offered it, to have a center in the name of Theodor Heuss, the first president after Hitler. And until today, it's a magnificent institution. It gives a week's holiday to mothers of large families who have to have a minimum of 4 children up to 16 children. So it's quite a vacation for them to be away from home for a week.
The concern shown by every employee here in every conceivable way is what makes the garden what it is. It's been planned from A to Z with extraordinary love and warmth.
Then I tried to build a girls' school in Jerusalem, which nobody wanted. They said there's no need and we don't need to do it. And I was again very stubborn, and I said we'll go and ask the social welfare department of the Jerusalem municipality. And I went to see Ms. Dr. Salzburger, a wonderful person, and she said to me, you bring the girls, you need a school, and do it. And so I went to Berlin, because was a man who gave only for Jerusalem. And I knew if I can meet him, I can get the money for the girls' school. So I asked my colleagues in Berlin who invited me to a certain function. I think it was 25 years of Wizo Berlin after the war. And I said, I will come on condition if I can meet Axel Springer. That was my condition. And they arranged a meeting, and I came to see him in about 3 or 4 minutes. He said, I give you 1 million Deutsche Mark, and you come next year, and I give you another 1 million Deutsche Mark. He liked the idea. So we have a school. I think that fundraising depends very much on who is approaching whom. And fundraisers who know the people they go to, and they know their attitude to Israel and to the needs of Israel, and who trust the person who comes to them. That is a terribly important thing. You must have the confidence of the people to whom you go. And don't think that I always get what I want. Sometimes I also don't, but it doesn't matter. I don't get frightened by it. Sometimes one has to try once or twice, and then you get it in the end. But until now, I must say, I did succeed in getting a lot of money. That's true.
The woman has a Midas touch. I mean, wherever she goes, I read it in the minutes, you know, at the end of the world there. Everywhere she goes, she comes back with hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, you have to have something special in you to be able to do that. You have to.
Raya has a strong personality, clear ideas, decision, and a great, great capacity of work.
But it's not only that, it's her extraordinary ability to lead. She has character. She knows exactly what she wants. She's a great woman. I think this sums up what I think of Raya.
Women like to follow a leader that says, like the Israeli army general says, Acharai. Raya always says, Acharai, and we follow. She also, at the same time, is very feminine, very talented, very elegant. And all those qualities make a great leader.
Well, after the 6 Days War in 1967, I went to see Mayor Teddy Kollek, and I asked him, what can we Wizo do for Jerusalem? And he said, build me 3 or 4 daycare centers.
Of course, the need was much greater, and Wizo continued, and by today, 22 years later, 23 years later, we have practically a daycare center for every year. 18 have already been completed, and 3 or 4 are under planning or construction, and I'm certain that Wizo will continue even after that. I said, Wizo promises, they fulfill everything they promise, and they do even a lot more, and that is so.
There are 62 Wizo institutions in Tel Aviv-Yafo, and I hope there will be more. During my 18 years as mayor, I've been very happy with Wizo's performance, with the way Wizo maintains its facilities, in every way and every place, whether that's on the level of management, education, finances, aesthetics, or Wizo's fine reputation. In Tel Aviv, everyone wants to attend a Wizo institution. The Wizo Parents' Home in Tel Aviv, a new direction for Wizo's activities, meeting the changing needs of the population. For years, we in Wizo dreamed of setting up a parents' home for Wizo veterans who had contributed their time and their money throughout their lives. But the Wizo World Council feared that we couldn't handle the expenses as well as the construction costs. And we had no experience up till that time with old people. Wizo's expertise was always with babies, with children, and with youth. Finally, Mrs. Jaglom got involved and found the first contributor, and that enabled us to begin realizing this dream.
I also didn't agree to close the Mothercraft Training Center when the South African Wizo Federation wanted to close it because it was in 58, 9, and I said, no, 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 Aliyah is still coming and we need the institution. There will be more people coming with children. It was a home for closed children. It means they stayed for 4 years from, even from the day of one day when there were young girls and women who just couldn't keep the children. They left them in front of our Mothercraft Training Center and we took them in and kept them for 4 years. And when our colleagues from South Africa wanted to give it up and do something else like absorption of women's clubs, I said no. Let us go on with it as long as there is Aliyah which needs it. And only when the Ministry of Social Welfare decided that we close it because it's not good to keep children in a closed institution, then I gave in. Then it remained empty for 2 or 3 years. And then again I came with a proposal to say, we want a parents' home, let's do it there. It's an empty building.
A main and major strength is that Raya is a builder. That when we had financial problems, deficit problems, there have been suggestions to close various projects, various institutions, and Raya says no. Our aim is to build. Our aim is to extend. We have to find the money somehow. Look, I know that in our own case, we have a school in Haifa, and the school was very much in danger. As a matter of fact, that was the present that they tried to give me when I took over the Australian Federation, a closure of our Achuzat Yeladim school. And it was due. Raya fought for that school like a lioness fights for her cup.
פעם בחלום ראיתי מהומה, כל השכונה הייתה ממש מהפכה. במקום לבכות צחקתי, ישבתי בקסמים, ואז פתאום כולם כבר מחייכים. להיות פתרב הגדול, מלכת קסמים ונפלאות. ואם אתה אוהב אוהב אותי, בוא לשיר את השיר.
אבל זה נכון שזה יפה לו?
ולי גם ארון, תצטלם אותי.
לא, עם התפילין לא עכשיו. עם התפילין לא עכשיו. בסדר? אז תלך עם זה כל הזמן. יאללה, אז בהצלחה לך.
A housewarming party for Ida Nudel. Veterans of the long and stubborn struggle for her release from the Soviet Union meet once again. Time to reminisce.
A tiny woman in a snowbound desert, a pail of water in her frozen hand, and in her hut a cold and hunger prey. In solitude she struggles, abandoned to the fray. And yet, against all reason, in some strange and curious way, it may be said that she is our only hope today.
When I look at all of you, I see you on Keren Kayemet with the candles in your hand, demonstrating and asking for Ida's release. It was for us a real challenge, a purpose, to get her out. Then I remember Ilana. Whenever I told Ilana something on the phone, what we are doing, she says, yes, but Ida is very depressed. Ida doesn't believe in it, and Ida cannot take it anymore. And Ida, the news that Ilana gave us was not very encouraging. So the more she gave us bad news, the more we tried to fight. Well, this actually is a result of our official visit in 1964 to the USSR. And it's funny as it may sound, Wizo, the Women's International Zionist Organization, is the only Zionist movement was officially invited to come to Russia. And we were invited by the Komitet Sovetskих Женщин, it's the Committee of Soviet Women in Moscow. And it was due to a discussion I had with the Soviet ambassador then in Israel, who was still here, Bodorov. And I used to see him at receptions, cocktail parties, and he always spoke to me because he knew only Russian, and I speak Russian, so he always used to come and ask me. And once he told me about what they do in Russia, and I said, well, we have now problems, so we have maybe to close something. And he said, it's your fault, because in Israel everything is built too big. We build small things. So I was very polite, and I said, well, I'd like to see it. Whereupon he said, well, why don't you go as a tourist? I'll give you a visa. And I said, no, I will only go if you invite me officially. And true enough, 2 or 3 months later, he rang up to say he has my invitation. And he brought it over. It was a very big document and written in Russian. And he brought it with his secretary, and I looked at it, and I was so excited I couldn't even read it. I was reading, and I didn't know what I was reading. Anyhow, I remember I asked the late Moshe Sharet immediately when the ambassador left. I rang him up, and I said, Moshe, I have an invitation for Wizo. To the USSR, and he says, you want to say that the word Zionist appears on it? I said, yes. He says, send me the document. I want to see it. He didn't believe it because it was so unusual to get it. And then I rang up Nachum Goldman, who was then in the country. I said, Nachum, what would you do about it? He said, go quickly before they change their mind. So we went, a delegation of 4 women, and then we came to meet the Jews in the synagogue. But at the time, they were the silent Jews. We couldn't talk to them. They were afraid of us. And we understood what this terrible tragedy of the Soviet Jewry. Not only frightened, but they didn't come near us to give us their names or to speak to us or what. And we came out really sick from it. Just one incident I remember in a daycare center, they took us to show us, which was beautiful, beautiful. The children performed beautifully. And there was a pianist sitting. We didn't look at her because we looked at the children. Very well dressed, and it was a performance. We knew it's a put-on performance for us. And when we left and we went into the cars, that pianist came running after us because she was afraid to tell us inside the daycare center. She came and put her head into the car, and she said, B'shana haba'a b'Yerushalayim, so that we should know she's Jewish. This was the way Soviet Jewry then behaved. So when I came out, I gave a report to the World Jewish Congress, which was then having a session in Jerusalem. It was in summer '64, and after I gave the report about Jews in Moscow, Kiev, and Leningrad, the ones we met in a way, even if they were the silent Jews, and they asked us to join the World Jewish Congress, which we did. And after that, through the World Zionist Organization, of which I became already a member of the executive, the whole thing started moving to organize conferences for Soviet Jewry.
The struggle for Soviet Jewry and the prisoners of conscience catapulted Wizo into the center of world Jewish life.
I think she has really developed Wizo enormously and raised the status or prestige, if you like, of Wizo throughout the world also a great deal. And as I mentioned, particularly going into the United States and now into Eastern Europe. And I think now one can say that Wizo is really encompasses the whole world.
Snapshots of a life spent in public service.
Well, Raya has been around a long time. She's an extraordinary woman who built an organization. She was the inheritor of Rebecca Seif. In fact, I had the honor of receiving from Raya Jaglom some of the Rebecca Seif Award, which meant an awful lot to me since I know that whole family so well. Raya has been a real worker in the vineyards of Jewish life.
I was privileged to travel with her through South America, where we met with presidents and ministers of foreign affairs. We met with the president of Mexico and also his wife. At the same time that Zionism had been called one of the evils of the world, and Raya Jaglom stood there and presented a most important declaration of what Zionism was all about, either to the President of Mexico, to the President of Costa Rica, to whatever leader she has met.
Her foresight. Europe was just freed 5 minutes ago, and yet she already went to Budapest, she already went to Prague, and it was her decision, her foresight to do so.
In 1990, Raya Jaglom chose Budapest as the site for the European Wizo Conference. This was the first official Zionist event held in Eastern Europe in more than half a century.
We are gathered here today to take part in an historic occasion, the opening of the first European Wizo Conference to be held in Budapest since the end of the Second World War. The historic dimension is augmented by tremendous emotion arising out of Wizo's reappearance in the Hungarian Jewish community. I'm sure that everyone present here today is greatly moved by the significance of this conference at this time and in this place. I would, however, like to quote a few phrases from a report made by Franziska Biselikis when she handed over the Hungarian Wizo flag to Rebecca Sieve in Tel Aviv in 1950. And I quote her, "I see the pitiful survivors who return from deportation being met at railway stations by the fragmented remnants of Hungarian Wizo, who gave them food and water and advised and guided them about finding lodgings and starting their lives anew. Very soon, all forms of Zionist activity were prohibited by the post-war administration here in this country." Franziska Biselikis describes the sorrowful reaction of Wizo members as follows. "I still see the tragic afternoon when we met to say goodbye to our organization. We wept bitterly at the crushing blow inflicted on us and finally rose to our feet and sang Hatikva." I attended a few meetings in Geneva at the United Nations as an NGO. And of course, we all wear this sign, Women's International Zionist Organization. When the people came up to say, "Oh, you're the Zionists," like as if we were criminals, as if we were some second-class, I just couldn't take that. I felt rotten about it, and I decided that's not for me. We have very good women doing that. Let them do it. I would go to any Jewish conference, international conference or Zionist conference, anywhere, because I like to be together with Jews from all over the world. But I can't take that atmosphere.
Does it remind you of something?
Maybe because I left Romania at a time of anti-Semitism, and I had to leave university because I was told Jewess in a derogatory way. And actually, I'm very grateful to the Hebrew University because they saved my life by having a certificate with the Hebrew University and having come with certificate, because otherwise the British wouldn't let me in at the time. That saved me from the Holocaust.
In May 1989, a delegation of 300 members of Wizo Aviv passed through the gates of Auschwitz, headed by Raya Jaglom. They came to protest.
We prove here the Jewish life is going on, and we are here to ask respectfully the nuns to move out of the concentration camp where Auschwitz, where millions of Jews were put through the crematorium in gas chambers. The crematoriums were built specially for the Jews, and it's only the Jews who went through the gas chambers. And we respect their prayers, we respect their religion, we respect the religious church, but we want them to respect the Jewish people, the Jews who have died because they were Jews. Let's remember them all.
For me, there was more, let's say, a political aim. I wanted that all these women, after seeing the tragedy of the camps, should help me organize a demonstration in front of the Auschwitz convent, because I believe very strongly that they had to be moved from there, that they shouldn't be in Auschwitz where 3 million Jews died. I think the fact that 360 women were standing in front of the convent with the flags of all their countries, protesting and asking that they should go out, I think it made also an impact. I actually worked to build up Wizo, and I grew with Wizo, together with Wizo. I never tried to build myself up. I tried to build up Wizo as a movement, and by pushing Wizo up, I came along, and that gave me strength, because I always saw a positive result. But the main thing is you must be determined to do something that you believe in. It's terribly important, and not to give in easily.